Jai Shri Radhe. So Vaishnav Jai Shri Krishna, part 34 of the reading of the 252 Vaishnava Varta, the 252 disciples of Sri Gosaiji. We are in the middle of the story of the Bengali Brahman, and starting here, Bhav Prakash. The question that arises here is, why did he offer the Shraddha or death anniversary preparations to Srinathji? This is opposed to the ways of the path of grace. Why did Srinathji accept those offerings? The Brahmin's wife had made the preparations from goods put aside for Shraddha. However, the Brahmin in his mind had not thought of the Shraddha day. On that day there was actually nothing else in the house. Therefore the Brahmin offered those preparations to Srinathji with a very pure heart. Seeing this love in his heart, Srinathji was pleased to accept the offerings. Srinathji is also known as the one who fulfills the devotee's desires to please him. If one offers up anything to Srinathji with true and perfect love, then he will certainly accept it. This is the principle here. Part 1 continued. The Brahmin realized that Srinathji had come to his home. When he had enjoyed the offerings and was about to leave to go back to his temple, he said, "I have partaken of your dumplings and jaggery, and now I am going." The Brahmin was so happy and felt that his life had been fulfilled. "My fortune is immense that Srinathji came to my home. Out of respect for Sri Gosaiji's path, he has accepting my offerings of dumplings and jaggery." At that same time, when Srinathji came to the Brahmin's house, Sri Gosaiji was up on Sri Giriraji offering Srinathji his lunch. However, Srinathji had gone to the Brahmin's house without Sri Gosaiji knowing. At the appropriate time, Sri Gosaiji accepted back the lunchtime offerings as prasad, performing the Rajbhog Aarti, came down from the mountain, partook of the prasad, and went to rest. However, he could not sleep. Then Srinathji, carrying a red cane in his hand, came to Sri Gosaiji. Sri Gosaiji bowed down to his lord, and then took him up onto his couch with him. He kissed his face, rubbed his cheeks, and asked, "Oh Baba, why are you out of sorts today?" Sri Srinathji said, "I am hungry today." Sri Gosaiji said, "But you just had lunch. Nevertheless, tell me what you would like, and I will get it for you." Srinathji said, "When you had already taken the offerings away when I came back, that's why I did not have my lunch." Bhav Prakash. The inner meaning of this is that the Lord, in his form as the uplifter of the devotee, Bhaktodharaka, had not eaten the offerings. He had partaken of them in his Sarvodharaka, the Lord who uplifts everyone, form, and thus was still hungry, according to Sri Gosaiji's loving mood for him. Part 1 continued. Sri Gosaiji was perturbed and asked Srinathji where he had been. Srinathji told him he had been to the Bengali Brahmin's house, the one who had offered the roll of very special cloth, to eat dumplings and jaggery. Srinathji told him all about that Brahmin's situation. When Sri Gosaiji heard all this, his heart was filled with emotion. Srinathji left Sri Gosaiji and went back up into his temple. Sri Gosaiji made all the inner temple servants bathe and told them to get together and make more lunchtime offerings for Srinathji. They did just that. Sri Gosaiji also bathed, went up to the temple, sounded the conch, and offered a plate of sweet balls. The main cook then informed Sri Gosaiji that all the offerings were ready. Sri Gosaiji accepted the sweet balls back of prasad and then offered all the rest of the lunch. After the appropriate time, Sri Gosaiji cleared the offerings and put Srinathji to rest, then descended the mountain and came to sit in his Betak, where he wrote a letter to that Bengali Brahmin. He sent it off with 2 Brajvasis. He wrote, "On that day, what was it that you offered to Srinathji? Please write back to me with your answer." The 2 Brajvasis soon reached that Vaishnava's home in Bengal. He was overjoyed to see them. They put Sri Gosaiji's letter in his hand, in which he had recounted all the events of that day. The Brahmin was filled with overwhelming love and put the letter onto his head, bowed down to it, and then became even more happy after reading it. He settled in the 2 Brajvasis comfortably, cooked, offered, and fed them with prasad. In the evening, the Vaishnava wrote his response. In it, he supplicated Sri Gosaiji over and over and wrote about everything that had happened on that day. He wrote, "O Maharaj, it was my very great fortune that Srinathji, with respect for your path, granted my wish. There were only a few dumplings." Then he sent the letter with the 2 Brajvasis after showing them every hospitality. It took them a few days to get back from Bengal to Gokul and deliver the Brahmin's letter to Sri Gosaiji. Sri Gosaiji gracefully read the letter. He felt very happy. He then went to Chacha Harivamsji and told him the whole story. He also experienced overwhelming love in his heart when he read it. Thus concludes Varta 13, the story of the Bengali Brahmin who was a recipient of Sri Gosaji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnav, although in reality there is no end to his story. So that concludes Varta 13. We're beginning today Varta 14, the story of Ganesh Vyas, a Srimali Brahmin who lived in the West. Bhav Prakash. Ganesh Vyas is a devotee of sattvic disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Pramodini. She manifests from Ratikala and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment or bhava. Ganesh Vyas was born into a family of Srimali Brahmins in the West. His parents died when he was only a few months old. One of his uncles took him into his home. He grew up there, and when he was about 20, he joined a group of people that was travelling to Mathura. They reached there after travelling for a few days. At that time, Sri Gosaji was residing in Mathura. He was performing his prayers on Vishram Ghat. It was there that Ganesh Vyas had his sight. He addressed him, "O Maharaj, I am an orphan having no parents. I take shelter in you. Please make me your disciple. Please give me some service." Sri Gosaji recognized him to be a divine soul and told him to take a bath in the Sri Yamunaji river. He bathed and came to Sri Gosaji. Sri Gosaji initiated him with the name and Brahma Sambandh. He then employed him as a personal servant. Ganesh Vyas began to serve very lovingly. Part 1. Once Ganesh Vyas was travelling to Dwarka to deliver some supplies to the Lord. One evening he had just left one village and it was travelling towards another when it began to rain really hard. He looked around but could not see anywhere to shelter. Then he espied a temple underneath a spire. He ran towards it. He saw there was a statue of a goddess inside. There was lots of worship paraphernalia there, but nobody to be seen. Ganesh Vyas thought to himself, there must be a priest in this temple. Perhaps he has gone into the village. He will be returning soon. Thinking thus, he found some shelter outside, put his luggage there, and sat down. Night fell, but no one came. That Devi was very powerful. She looked after all her things to herself. Offerings came to her on a regular basis from one king. She would eat them and then just sit there. If any pujari dared to come there, she would devour him. Thus she was famous in all the local villages. Worship paraphernalia would be donated, but she collected them all and put them to one side. At that time, one lone man came there to have her sight. He said to Ganesh Vyas, "Do not sleep here. No priest ever sleeps here. No one can stay here." Ganesh Vyas asked him the reason for this. He told him, "No one stays here or sleeps here because if they did, the goddess would eat them." That man had the sight of the goddess, told all of this to Ganesh Vyas and then departed. Fearlessly, Ganesh Vyas went inside and put all the donated items in one corner. He bathed the goddess, sounded the Lord's name in her ear and put a prasadi tulsi mala around her neck. He made her into a Vaishnava. He looked around and found all sorts of items lying there. Using them, he cleaned the temple. He stayed there that night. He ate whatever prasad he had with him. He drank water from a nearby well and then went to sleep. That night the goddess spoke to him in a dream and told him not to offer her the type of things he had been bringing. She told him that she had become a Vaishnava and that she would now not eat meat as before. She told him to employ a priest there to cook for her and that she would eat whatever he cooked. The king was very surprised. The next morning, Ganesh Vyas picked up his supplies and carried on with his journey. The king again came to have the sight of the goddess. He noticed that someone had washed the temple and bathed her. He noticed the tulsi mala tied around her neck. He was very happy to see all of this. He then employed a priest to serve her and provided him with the supplies for the daily offerings. The priest would cook and make the offerings to her and then he would eat. Bhav Prakash. This is the true form of an accomplished Vaishnava. They purify demigods, goddesses and pilgrimage spots. This Vaishnav was so kind that he stopped his journey to fulfill that goddess's purpose. So we take rest from the reading here. Now, so Vaishnavanku Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Continuing tomorrow with this Varta 14. Jai Shri Radhe.